Good afternoon. I would like to start my today's session with the following idea, and I would like you to put your comments and your thoughts if you agree with this or not. Children are superior to adults when it comes to learning a language successfully. Is it myth or not? Some people consider it that it is a myth, but teaching children is totally different from teaching adults. What factors must be considered when teaching children? Today in this session we are going to discuss the factors that are used in teaching children and adults. When we talk about children, we should first of all consider intellectual development of learners as a child. So, intellectual development of children starts from age 7 to 11, and according to Piaget, it is considered concrete operational stage. Why it is considered this stage? Because in this age, our children have difficulty using deductive logic, which means learning from general to specific. For instance, if we say all oranges are fruits and all fruits grow on trees, then our learners, our children at the age of 7 to 11 must think that all oranges grow on trees because they don't have enough ability to learn from specific to general. Considering these facts, considering the fact of intellectual development, we should consider that children are centered in there and here and now. The function of purpose of language is also very important in this stage. Why? Because children cannot understand the use of meta-language to explain linguistic concepts, which means in this stage, learners are not good at learning grammar and learning structures. That's why it's better if we focus on function of the language rather than the form and meaning. So, in order to teach children what methods we should use in the classroom, first of all, my recommendation given here is that don't use meta-language to explain grammar, which means that your grammar should be explained in simple and very ordinary words so that it would be understandable. Language which is beyond our children's understanding will not be effective for them to acquire the given grammar topic. Second, avoid rules stated in abstract terms, which means when doing grammar activities, try to use concrete terms. Try to avoid rules which contain abstract terms. Next, certain patterns may be taught if the teacher is able to show the students. Most of the activities should be carried out by the teacher in the way of activities or in the way of role plays. And we should also do a lot of repetition in this stage. Certain patterns should be shown and repeated in the meaningful way so that our children could acquire the given material. So, now let's talk about next aspect of children. It is attention span. So some researchers say that compared to adults, children have short attention span. Is it true or not? Maybe yes, but it is connected with some ideas as well. Let's turn to these ideas. So, why children have attention span? In which case our children may have short attention span? So there are given three factors. If the material we are giving is boring, if the material we are giving is useless, and if the material we are presenting is difficult. And the three aspects of our giving material can raise in learners, in our children, short attention span. And that's why what should we do? As a teacher, we should organize our learners to be interesting and attractive for our learners. Now, what do teachers need to do? Let's move on the recommendation in the classroom. First of all, we should design activities that capture learners' attention and raise students' immediate interest. Provide variety in activities, so repetition of the same activity at the same lesson will be boring for learners. That's why we should give them variety of activities. Teachers should be animated, lively and enthusiastic. So during the classes while teaching children, teacher should be as an actor. She should act all the materials or all the actions given by her or by him. Teacher also needs to have a sense of humor. Maybe in our culture it's not so acceptable when teacher makes jokes with learners, but it is demanded that while teaching children, sense of humor is very important, because while creating some humoristic atmosphere can change our children's mood and develop their interest towards our lesson. And another thing we should mention here is that teachers should tap into students' curiosity, because we know that children usually at the age of 7 to 11 they are very curious about things and things around them. And next factor we should think about teaching children is sensory input, as we know that all children, all people, all humanity has 5 senses, including children. They are hearing, seeing, smelling, tasting, and touching. And while teaching, we should try to stimulate all 5 senses which we just mentioned. So how? There is a question. How we can do this in this classroom? Now here I have mentioned some ideas. For instance, first of all, we can complement our lesson with physical activities. It can be total physical response activity, role plays and games. Second, we can conduct some projects and hands-on activities which require learners to work in groups and use their body, parts of body. For instance, we can ask them to create some words, some structures, in order to give them that practice which gives them meaningful language. Next is we can also use smelling, tasting, touching through audio visuals. For instance, we can bring some realia into classroom. We can bring some pictures, some photos, so that they have to use their smelling, tasting, and touching senses as well. Of course, non-verbal language is also important here. For example, teacher can use a lot of gestures and body language as well. Now, next factor to be considered while teaching children is affective factors. As you know, affective factors are connected with the children's feeling. And there is another statement which is considered a myth or not a myth. Children are not affected by the inhibitions that block adults in their learning. Is this a myth? No. Here it says that children have many more inhibitions and they are more fragile in comparison with adults. Because as you know, in this age, children start developing their egos. That's why they are extremely sensitive to classmates. For example, you may not praise their peers in front of them, or you may not just differentiate their skills among each other. Because at this period, their egos are on the process of being shaped. So in order to consider effective factors, what do teachers need to do in the classroom? There are some suggestions. For example, sometimes when our children, when our young learners do some errors, we can have our learners, our students laugh at each other's errors rather than being too serious or rather than criticizing them for their errors. And second thing, teachers should be patient and supportive, but it doesn't mean that you should be not firm in your expectations. And we should also encourage oral participation as much as possible, especially from those who always keep silent during your teaching process. Next factor while teaching children is authentic, meaningful learning. And here it says children will be interested in learning a language if they can use it for here and now, which means immediately during the teaching process. So, and here for this we can give some recommendation. So, in the classroom, teachers should avoid stilted language, which means language which is not common for children, which is too much complicated to understand for learners. We should use context-embedded language. For example, usage of dialogues, usage of stories, usage of different songs, familiar situations and characters would be more desirable in order to present a new language to our learners. Besides, we should use the whole language approach and take into consideration that language is a vehicle for communication. Now, in comparison, teaching children, we can also discuss teaching adults. Many rules to teaching children may apply to teaching adults. Some practitioners, some methodologies say that teaching children and teaching adults do not contrast very much. Yes, because when adults become language learners, they become children. That's why there is not concrete or separate methodology for teaching adults. That means that many rules that we are applying to children can also be applied to teaching adults. But there is one difference that adults have superior cognitive abilities in comparison than children, which means that while explaining the theme or grammar rules, we can use some meta language phrases as well, because they have their cognitive abilities are much more developed than children. They can create, adults usually create mental images and deal with the language that is not isolated. That's why when we teach adults, we should try to teach everything in context, creating them a situation for understanding the given topic. And one difference between teaching children and adults is that adults have self-confidence that children lack. Children usually don't have self-confidence that adults have. That's why it is easier to teach adults in comparison with children, because adults are much more confident in their actions and in their learning process. So, in this session, we discuss the comparison of teaching methods to children and adults. So, later you can watch some video materials taken from the classes for children and adults, so that you could compare and see if the above mentioned information really fits to the real life situation or not. While considering teaching different age groups, we should mention or focus our attention to one stage of age group, which is called teens. So, teaching teens. When we talk about teaching teens, there might appear some questions, because this period of development of human personality is considered to be the most changeable and the most important stage, because, as you know, our children go through the transformation stage when they become teenagers. And while teaching English, we should also consider their psychophysiological changes in their development. And today I'm going to give you, apart from teaching adults and children, to give some recommendation on teaching teens. My first recommendation is use a lot of music in your class. According to Jerry Anderson, where she gives in her Does and Do's book, teens live through the feelings provoked by music, and it is a window to their learning. So you cannot imagine any teens without being interested in any kind of music, or you cannot imagine any teen who is without earphones on their ears and listening to music. That's why in order to find way to their soul, we should use a lot of music, and that type of music which they are mostly interested in. That can be rap music, hip-hop music, or classic music. Any kind of music that are interesting for teenagers can be useful while teaching them foreign language. My second recommendation is using games. Some people might think that games are only for children. No, teens are also very much interested in games, because this is the period when they become highly motivated and highly competitive, in the sense of that they want to show off, they want to boast with their development and show themselves to their group mates and classmates as well. So, using games, you can let them the chance to show themselves off. Let them show off, according to Jerry Anderson. Next recommendation is use a desire, which means that in this process of development, teenagers usually want to express themselves. So in this case, different kind of projects, presentations, posters can be implemented in order to let them personalize their learning, to use some of their own experiences in the process of learning. Next suggestion is use current material. As you know, teens are very up to date and they may be experts in gathering information in the internet in comparison with adults. That's why it would be better if we use in our classes current, new materials, because they allow anything new and personally relevant material. Next is, as we know that in this phase of development, children are usually interested in relationships. That's why a lot of teamwork, group works can be desirable in this stage, because they are hardwired for relationship in this stage, and they thrive on projects, peer interaction, and group work as well. Next recommendation is use acting, which means that through action, through role-playing, teens will try to express themselves, and using role plays can allow us to give them opportunity to express their inner feelings, conflicting feelings in a safe manner. Next can be usage of choice. Try to give learners, teen learners, an opportunity to choose their learning material, because in this stage of development they are usually trying to be independent, and a lot of control can be harmful for their learning process. That's why giving them choice and control motivates them a lot. Use what they know. As you know, teens know lots and have diverse experience in comparison with children or adults. That's why if we want to make them motivated into the process of language learning, it would be better if we use their interest and passion in the class content. Try to choose those topics which would be interesting for them and which could motivate them into the process of learning. We should also think about attention span, as we mentioned in adults and in children. Teens also have a very short attention span. Even in comparison with kids, their attention span can be shorter. That's why we should use a quick pace while performing our activities. And we should also think about changing the activities, varying our activities as well. So, next recommendation is use activity. As we know, in this transformation or transforming stage of children's development, their bodies are also changing and they need to experience and practice their new physical self. That's why TPR activities, role plays, action plays would be much more desirable in this stage. So, another suggestion can be use proactive class control, which means that in this stage, learners are not very much too eager to be controlled by the teacher. They want a teacher in control, but they don't like authority. That's why, while managing the classroom, we should try to use our positive management skills rather than being more authoritative towards learning. So, about L1, most methodologists and practitioners still argue to what extent L1 should be or desirably be used in our teaching process. So, in this period, teens can be allowed to use L1 at times, not all the time, but at times. You can give a chance for them to respond to your answers to L1, and because in this age they are mature enough to switch gears and can help misunderstanding, which means anytime you can switch into L1 and L2. So L1 is also desirable in this age. So, as we mentioned these suggestions, all these suggestions can be used in our classroom while teaching teenagers, but it's again, we should mention that It is up to the teacher which suggestion to use in their classroom, and it is also considered, should be considered in accordance with learners' needs and interests. Thank you for your attention.